Evening. We
Good
are
evening.
back to the Spirit's book after a break of 1 week for Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving. We last stopped in the item Soulmates, still book 2, chapter 6. And we discussed a little bit about soulmates. We haven't finished, but we talked about the concept of soulmates does not really exist according to Spiritism. We could say that spirits can connect to each other through affection with like-minded ideas and ideals, but the human concept of soulmate, in the sense that there is one other spirit there to complete you, Spiritism doesn't agree with it. We all are evolving, and as we evolve, we connect to each other. We find deeper connections with some spirits that will follow us. We will follow together on our eternal journey, but not really in the sense that we have another half that complete us, because if that was the case, a spirit will be incomplete when separated from its other half. And we know that we go through several incarnations and several different connections with spirits, and so that concept in a huge universe doesn't really make any sense. But still, there are some people that believe in it, and we will see, more. We have a couple of questions left. We stopped on 300, so we're going to start on 301. Philip, you do the honors.
301. When two spirits are completely like-minded, do they complement one another, or is this sympathy the consequence of their perfect identity of character? The sympathy attracting one spirit to another is the result of the perfect harmony of their predispositions and instincts. If one were needed to complete the other, individuality would be lost.
Again, going back to the same theme, right? Of course, there are spirits that complement one another on our journey, because we cannot evolve by ourselves. So we can use spirits that are connected to us to complete us on a temporary basis, to help us move forward, to teach us, and to work with us on our evolutionary path. But we don't need another spirit to complete us. That's the concept here. If that was the case, individuality will be lost. We can, we have to achieve our perfection by ourselves, learning and evolving morally and intellectually by ourselves, with the assistance and help with all those spirits that are able to assist and help us, and with some spirits walking hand in hand with us for a certain period of time, but not for eternity, because we all have our own personal journeys to reach perfection. Okay? Next.
302. Does a similarity of thoughts and ideas constitute perfect sympathy, or is the uniformity of knowledge also required? Perfect sympathy results from having an equal degree of elevation. Okay,
so here we now have two wings of evolution, the moral and the intellectual. We find ourselves, let's say, when we go back to the spiritual world, surrounded by spirits that have a similar degree of elevation that we have. Similar, but different degrees, of course. We're going to find, when we read about Nosular, spirits of different levels of evolution, but all those there willing to improve themselves and willing to work on their improvement, not attached to evil tendencies, to inferior attractions. Imperfect spirits, as we all are here, but with a desire to improve themselves. So when we talk about perfect sympathy, it would be spirits that have a similar degree of evolution morally, most important morally, but also to some degree intellectually. The moral part is always the hardest one, because the intellectual evolution is just a matter of committing ourselves, studying that we will learn, and it's an accumulation of knowledge that gives us the intellectual evolution. The moral evolution is the hardest part, because we have to get rid of our imperfections. So again, throughout our evolutionary journey, we will always have spirits around us, and some of those spirits will be more in close connection with ourselves, because we are at the same level of elevation than others, but that changes, as we're going to see in the next question. Okay. Next, Philip.
303. May spirits become sympathetic in the future, even if they are not so today? Yes, they all eventually will. A spirit who is currently in a lower sphere will advance to join another spirit in a higher world. Their reunion will occur sooner if the higher spirit fails any of its trials and remains stationary. Can two currently sympathetic spirits cease to be so? Absolutely, if one of them is lazy. The theory of soulmates is merely a figurative representation of the union of two sympathetic spirits and should not be taken literally. Spirits using this expression do not belong to the higher orders. Hindered by their narrow range of ideas, they have expressed their thoughts using terms that they employ during their physical lives. We must disregard this idea of two spirits created for each other, who must someday be inevitably reunited in eternity after having remained separated for a more or less long period of time.
Okay, so we all have our personal journeys. Our evolutionary path is individual. So of course, spirits that we are in close connection today may not be in such a close connection in the future, if we evolve faster than them, or vice versa. We are always trying to help and assist our loved ones, but we are not tied to them in our evolutionary path. You remember the example of André Luiz and his mother. His mother is already in a more elevated plane, comes to be with him for some time, but they are not together because they are at different paths of evolution. So were they the same level at one point during their incarnations? Maybe. But at this stage, they are no longer. So the same thing can happen to us. Spirits that today we are in close connection because we are at the same degree of evolution, we can separate. But again, we never lose our loved ones. We are always going to be connected to them. But connected to them, it doesn't mean to be with them at all times. That's different. We never lose our loved ones, but each one has their own tests. Again, like parents with kids, when they grow old, they go away, they go to college, they live their independent lives. They don't live with us anymore. Do we love them less because of that? Generally not. Again, let's talk in general terms. It's the same thing in our evolutionary path as spirits. So when the spirit says, if one of them is lazy here, meaning if one doesn't make an effort to evolve and the other is making an effort to evolve, they are going to eventually be separated. And then Kardec finishes this item of soulmates talking about the theory of soulmates is just a figurative representation, and spirits that use this expression of soulmates do not belong to higher orders, because more elevated spirits know that the word soulmates literally do not exist. We have to disregard this idea of two spirits created for each other. I remember us going through this item last time we studied this book, and there was someone there that wouldn't accept that. She thinks that we have soulmates and we are going to be together with our soulmates forever. Again, Spiritism is free and open to anyone having their own ideas and ready to accept what Spiritism teaches us or not, depending on our own ideas. It's important for us to question and to have our own opinions. So what we are presenting here is the Spiritist views on the subjects. That doesn't mean that we all have to accept all of them or agree with all of them. Eventually, the truth is out there. Eventually, we will reach the truth on our own pace. Okay? Any questions here on soulmates before we move to the next item? Comments, questions? Okay, so everyone is comfortable with the ideas. All right. Now, this is a more complicated subject, the memory of the physical life. So here we're going to talk about, when we go back to the spiritual world, what do we remember and how? So again, when Kardec published the Spirit's book, these were answers from the Spirit and very first ideas on remembrancing of our previous life and previous lives. It was further explored by other literature, and especially in the books of Francisco Xavier and André Luiz collection that talks about remembering and what we remember and what we do not. On our conversations with spirits in our mediumship meetings, we get more details of what they remember and what they not. And mostly, when the spirits are in a state of confusion, they can barely remember a lot of things of their previous existence, the immediate one. So we can imagine that others is much more difficult. But let's see what Spirits tells us here in Kardec, and we'll talk about it. Okay? You're on mute, Philip.
Number 304, does a spirit remember its physical life? Yes. Since a spirit has lived as a human being many times, it remembers what it has been and often laughs at the foolishness of its past, like adults who laugh when reminiscing about the foolishness of their youth and the silliness of their childhood.
Okay. So we discussed this several times. What do we remember? We clearly remember our immediate previous incarnation, because this is fresh in our memory, and we, as soon as we get to a normal sense of understanding our life in the spiritual world, we are going to remember the previous incarnation. The other ones, it will be on a need-to-know basis, because remembering that we are always evolving, of course, the best version of ourselves was our last incarnation that we remember. Before that, it was worse versions of ourselves. So to remember everything may cause more problems than solve problems. So that's why we remember previous existences on a need-to-know basis according to our necessities. You think of Emmanuel, for instance, that wrote several books on his incarnations. Of course, he has access as an evolved spirit and a spirit that is prepared and ready to deal with those previous existences and the consequences of his actions. It is, he's able to remember. And of course, for the publication of the books and for him to pass the books to Chico Xavier, he has to remember it. But, if we imagine, if you think of the book 2,000 years ago, when he has an encounter with Jesus, and Jesus tells him that he has a choice, that he can follow him or not follow him, that will cause him a lot of struggles. And he decides not to follow Jesus. He's not prepared to follow Jesus, and we see the struggles. So if at a certain point in his evolution, he cannot remember that, because that's going to cause him more pain and suffering than solve anything. As he becomes a more evolved spirit and really becomes a follower of the master, as we know throughout his incarnations and some of the stories, he's more prepared to deal with his previous incarnations. And that's the same thing that happens to us. So curiosity is not going to help us remember our past incarnations. Necessity is what is going to help us remember previous incarnations. Okay? Yes, Dani.
Since we are reading the book from Emmanuel, and you mentioned him like remembering his past lives, how is he? Does he have a special access in terms of remembering what everybody said at that specific day and time? Like, his books are very detailed, and he, like, if I think as a movie, he knows everybody's lines and the time and the behavior. So is that a memory he retains, or is that a help he gets in the spiritual world to access that, or through another medium? I don't know.
Both. Okay. So in question 306, the spirits, Kardec asked the spirits if spirit remember every detail of its life. So everything that we went through is registered in our perispirit, in our spirit, registers everything. So if needed, we can access every detail of our lives. And that's the case of Emmanuel when he's passing his experience to Chico. Now, Chico told us also that when he was writing those books, he would be present in the events as they were happening. So he would, let's say, be part of the movie that he was present. So he would see everything that was happening and participate as a testimonial of everything that is happening. So Emmanuel is dictating what is happening, and he's seeing at the same time every detail of what's happening. So you see the combination of everything there. Again, for us, it's kind of hard to imagine how is this possible, but that's how Chico describes and how we know about our storage of memories and experiences. So it's possible to bring back every detail of our lives. Yes. Again, normally we are going to remember, like, if I ask you, do you remember what you did when you were 5 years old? You remember that you went to school, so you may remember basics. I remember, when I was in kindergarten, I remember a couple of colleagues, the teacher, but not the details. I don't know what I did on the second day or the 10th day of class. But if needed, I can, with the help and assistance with more elevated spirits, I can access all the details because they are stored somewhere in my bank memory. But I don't need it. That's why I don't remember. Yes.
But when you said who could see everything as a movie, you mean Emmanuel or Chico Xavier?
Chico.
Okay, but that was for all the books he was?
The Emmanuel books.
Only the Emmanuel books?
Yes, the historical books.
Mm.
Yes.
So the other books, he was like he's unconscious, but he isn't. He's really is an spectator of the story as well.
Yeah, on the André Luiz books, I don't remember him telling that he was seeing what was going on, being present there. But again, in the book Domain of Mediumship, we have heard that the spirit center that they go and the main experiences are, it's the spirit center that Chico used to work. And so there are different names, but the experiences happen in the spirit center that Chico used to work in Pedro Leopoldo. So he was there in a sense, right? But in the books of Emmanuel, Chico was, it was like he said, like he was watching a movie, but he was part of the movie. That's how he experienced the story. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
305?
Yeah.
Do spirits spontaneously recover memory of their physical life immediately after death? No. It comes back to them little by little, like objects gradually becoming visible out of a fog once they focus on it.
Yeah. So again, well, I briefly mentioned this, right? When we talk to spirits, to struggling spirits on our mediumship meetings, and we ask them, where do you come from? Many of them say, I don't remember. Many of them don't have the details of what happened to them, or they have a vague recollection of where they were, especially those that are struggling a lot. Spirits that don't know that they went back to the spiritual world, they are thinking that they are still living, and so they have they tell their experiences as they were still alive. The death of the physical body, discarnation of the spirit, causes a state of confusion to all spirits. How long it lasts, it depends on each one. So spirits can stay for a very long time in this state of confusion if they are not prepared for the discarnation, they are not prepared to the return of the spiritual world, if they refuse to accept the idea that life continues, and so on and so forth. So for those that remember the movie The Others, right? When Nicole Kidman and the kids, they stayed in the house after they died, right? They went back to the spiritual world without being aware that they were back in the spiritual world. So for them, life was continuing as they were living. Well, of course, with some confusions and some alterations there because of the state they were in. But they were living as they were still living. So that's an example of a state that you remember your present life because you think you continue living it. Now, some spirits go back to the spiritual world, and in this state of confusion, especially if they went through a long illness and are not prepared still to deal with the reality of living in the spiritual life, because they have been in a difficult state of mind during their last few years, it will take them a while to recover the ability to remember, to fully remember. So you think of a patient that had Alzheimer, that stayed with Alzheimer for, let's say, 10 years. So a patient was kind of out of this world and not really in the spiritual world, was half here, half there. So for this patient to recover the ability, mental abilities back in the spiritual world, if it's a spirit that of average evolution, like most of us, it will take a while for them to readjust into the spiritual world. Eventually they will, and they will remember, but it may take a while. And again, there is no rule, there is no specific time, depends on each one of us. A spirit that is fully prepared to understands the life in the spiritual world and is fully prepared, you know, in a couple of days, they are back to remembering everything that happened to them and remembering their immediate existence without any major issue. So we cannot really talk about general terms, because each case is a case. But we can remember, like the description they say here, gradually becoming visible out of a fog once they focus on it. So if with the assistance they receive, they will start remembering little by little. And if they meet loved ones on the other side, that will help them remember also. So there are several ways to do it. But again, it's the immediate life that they will remember. Okay. Eric is asking here on the chat, when you say memory bank, we are referring to the neural nets of your brain. Again, we're not talking about physical brain, Eric. We're talking about eternal spirit. So the very spirit has a brain. Luis already appeared here to comment. Good. But the memory bank is in the spirit. It's not in the physical body or the spiritual body. With the spirit, the perispirit has a brain, but the memory bank is in the spirit. Luis.
No, you did a good job. No need of my interference here.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, next one.
306. Does a spirit remember every detail of its life? Can it grasp its entire life at a single retrospective glance? Depending on the influence things have had on its state as a spirit, it remembers them more or less clearly. However, we should understand there are many trivial things in its life of no importance, such as the spirit does not even try to remember them. Could it remember them if it wanted to remember? It could recall the most obscure details of every incident of its life, even of its thoughts. However, a spirit will not choose to do this if it does not fulfill a useful purpose. Does it understand the purpose of its physical life in relation to the future life? Of course, it sees it and understands it better than when incarnated in the living. It understands the need for purification to reach God, and it knows that some of its impurities are shed in each existence.
So again, what we discussed here, and also answering Danny's question. First, we have to understand that, again, like our physical life, do we remember every detail of our physical life? No. You know, the earliest recollection that most of us have is probably around 2, 3, 4 years old, right? We don't have any recollection before that, most of us. Can we do a regression therapy and reach the time that we were at the womb of our mother? It's possible, but what what would be the usefulness of something like that, right? You don't need to remember how you learn how to walk. It's not really relevant. So what the spirits are trying to tell us here, that what stays with us, what is part of our evolutionary path, is what's important, what makes a difference in our life. So the main facts of our lives are what stays with us, and it's no different than how we remember our past here on this incarnation. We go back to the spiritual world. Once the fog clears, we are going to remember our previous existences exactly, more or less, like we remember here. Of course, without the restrictions of the physical body, we may be able to see more clearly and analyze better some events of our physical life. But your question, Danny, is answered on A, right? It could recall the most obscure details of every incident of its life, even of its thoughts. However, spirit will not choose to do this if it does not fulfill a useful purpose. In the case of Emmanuel, it fulfilled a useful purpose, was to tell a story. So he would remember every detail of every incident of his life that was important to tell the story of the book, right? So that's how he remembers everything, because he has the ability to access, because it has a useful purpose. And finally, on B, again, we, of course, looking back at our physical life when we are back in the spiritual world, we may be able, depending on our degree of evolution, we may be able to understand better things that happened in our life, and the objectives and what the reasons of everything that happened in our life. And we can look back and see the progress we made in some areas and the lack of progress we made in others, looking at our past existence and looking at our needs and wants. Okay, so three kind of different things in the same question here, but again, it's the idea that we will remember on a need-to-know basis. We can remember details, and we will understand better our life objectives when we are back in the spiritual world. Okay. Questions here, comments?
Johnny.
Okay. Yes.
For me, this B point, I don't know if you agree, but it's one of those points from the Spirit's book that does not really match our experience in the mediunic meetings. I wonder why. Probably, my personal view, I don't know if you agree, is that the spirits communicating to Kardec were reasonably advanced. They had a different perspective, because I don't know your experience, but we meet so many spirits in the ethereal world, in our mediumistic meetings, that don't know up from down. They don't even know they are dead. And when they do, they are so confused. So I think this is sort of stretching it, that all spirits understand better. And I don't think, I believe some of them don't have a clue. What's your view on this?
Yeah,
That's very good. That's very good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the answer from the spirits here is directed at spirits that are on an evolutionary path, understanding the needs and the obligations that they have in the physical life. So the majority of spirits that are in the lower zones, or they are still struggling to evolve, of course won't be able to see and understand the physical life in relation to the future life. But a spirit at our, I think a spirit at our level of involvement, with our degree of knowledge that have been studying here, that have been learning here, we are going to get there, and we are going to be able to have a better understanding of our physical life in relation to our eternal journey. That's my my understanding. It's not my hope, it's my understanding at our stage of evolution. Again, each one is different, but my understanding here is that if you are aware of your limitations, but aware of your need to improvement, aware of your state as eternal spirit, and on an evolutionary path, we will be able to look at our previous life with a degree of critical analysis to be able to understand our advancements and our shortcomings.
One further question. Have you ever had a chance to have a spirit in your mediumistic meetings that was formerly a part of your group?
Elmo, help me here. I'm trying to remember.
I mean, when incarnated, of course.
Yeah.
While Elmo thinks, it has happened in our group, and as you know, the guy was a spiritist, and he was pretty lost afterwards. So I must say I was sort of disappointed. Anyway.
Elmo,
you remember?
That has been a part of our group? I don't think so. I don't think that's ever happened.
We receive a message from that kid.
Message,
right?
yes, but a conversation, no.
Not a conversation, but a message from that kid. What was his name? Forgot his name. The one that died in a fight in the street. Eduardo. Yes. Yeah. Eduardo sent a message, right? Psychography, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he said that he was in a better position there in the spiritual world than he was here. Here in the physical world, he was bipolar. He was struggling with a mental disease, and the spiritism helped him a lot. And when he gave the communication, he was in a much better state in the spiritual world, right, Elmo?
Yes, and he was asking for prayers for loved ones who was left behind, that they were struggling. I remember that.
Yeah, the mother and the brother, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, he was very conscious. That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
I hope you're right.
But to Louis' comment regarding the mediumship meetings, I think it goes along in relationship to answer of question B. What I had said last week, that mediumship is like special ed. It's for those who are outside of the normal processes. Again, I say, the normal education, you go first grade, second grade, third grade, following a normal chronological of events progressing naturally. And who needs the special ed? Those who cannot follow up, those who have struggles, those who have some kind of disability, those are the ones who need the special ed. And the analogy that I make is the mediumship meeting, especially the kind of work that we do, is special ed. It's for those who are outside of the average, outside of the normal.
That's an interesting point, Elmo. Thank you. Eric, he made a very interesting question. He's asking me if I could check if the spirit was really who he was claiming to be. Fantastic question, very appropriate, Eric. Actually, no, I could not, but other people there, mediums, they guaranteed us that the guy was the guy who was saying it is. So maybe they were wrong, I'm not sure, but
if you have seen mediums in your meeting, they would be able to tell you if he was the spirit, because they can see the spirit, right?
Yeah, well, we do have strong seeing mediums there. Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, so, yeah, you tend to believe that it is, but again, you know, we just discussed the clone on Sunday on the Q&A, right? So,
yeah. And mystification and
mystification, and yeah.
So, but very good question, Eric. By the way, it happens.
It's a very, very important question, something that we spiritists should never disregard is, you know, reject the truth before you accept a lie, you know. Be very careful, be very investigative of those things.
Anyone else? Okay. I really like this subject. I think it's a very interesting subject. So, you know, I have a lot of ideas and opinions on the subject, as you are noticing. Okay, 307.
How does a spirit recall its past life? Is it through an effort of imagination, or is it like a picture right before its eyes? Both. Everything that is interested in remembering appears to it as if it were present. Other life events appear more or less vaguely in its thoughts or are forgotten entirely. The more dematerialized the spirit is, the less importance it attaches to material things. When we communicate with an errant spirit who has just left this world, it often forgets the names of people it liked or other details that may seem important to you. They are inconsequential to the spirit, and it erases them from its memory. However, it remembers perfectly the main events of its life that have contributed to its improvement.
So, you know, this also answers the question that Danny asked earlier, right? How the spirit recalls its past life. Both through an effort of the imagination or of the memory, and like a picture right before its eyes. So the spirit sees the past as if it was present, but also remembers it. So it's a combination of both. But again, depends on the need and the necessity of remembering and the importance of remembering. They talk here, the spirits talk here later about sometimes they forget the names of people it liked and other details. And, you know, it's true because you talk with two people that have gone through an experience 30 years ago together, and you ask them to describe the experience. You have very likely two complete different descriptions because how each one of us experiment a passage of our lives are different from others. So what was important to someone, it's not as important to others. So, you know, you talk about how important was that toy that we, you know, for when you were 8 years old, that toy was the most important thing in your life. And if I ask you today, what was that toy that was the most important toy you had? Most of us probably won't remember. Some of us may remember because it was important there. It's not important now. And, you know, you amplify that to an eternal life with a spirit living on our eternal journey. Some facts or people in our lives are not that important for us to remember. If we need to, we are going to remember and we go there. But if they are, as they say here, inconsequential to the spirit, it disappears from our memory. But the main important facts, and here they talk about the facts that have contributed to its improvement, but also the facts that have harmed us in a significant way. We are going to remember the traumas. We carry those with us, because those we have to overcome, and it's important for us to remember to be able to overcome. Sometimes they paralyze ourselves, they prevent our progress. They can create, in less evolved spirits, the mono ideas that will end up being the ovoids. But so, it's according to our necessities, according to what's important at the moment. And that's why when we go back to the mediumship meetings, the spirits that come to us, sometimes we ask them questions that we think it's important for us to be able to enter into the conversation, and they don't remember, they don't know the answer, because for them it's not important or it's not relevant at the moment. And so we have to work our way around it. But yes, that's it. Any comments, questions here?
Was I the only one who lost part of the conversation?
Did I froze to
No,
all
you-
you?
Not to
No.
me.
Okay, great. Something happened between me and the connection to you guys.
I had
okay.
that myself a while back, a few minutes back too.
Yeah. So if it's not to everyone, that's your own
It must be
internet.
individual. Yes. It must
Yeah,
be.
individual internet. Yeah. Okay. All right. But it's important to ask, Philip, because if everybody loses, it's important that I repeat. Okay.
308.
Yes, Elmo.
No, Renato.
Oh, Renato, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, thought it was Elmo.
No. No, I was just thinking. We are giving like emphasis on remembering, but on mediumship meetings in particular, the remembering part, at least my perception, it wasn't that important. Meaning, it's more of what the spirit believes, because even though they remember what were facts, they might interpret different. They want to forget, or they don't want to deal with. So, and sometimes when they remember, they can overcome the struggle. So I was thinking, I want to hear your thoughts that if the memory of what happened, depending on the level of evolution of the spirits, is not as important on how the spirit wants to achieve or overcome or is willing to deal with the quote unquote reality of the memory itself.
Yeah. I know what. I think I understand what you're saying. But again, the spirit may not want to deal with their past, because to face the past will force them to deal with the past. So they may want to not remember it. We the dialoguers, we have to try to make sense of what the spirit is talking. So that's why we ask about where they come from, what they were doing, for us to be able to understand what we are dealing with in the moment. But sometimes when these are not important to the spirit, or they don't have a recollection, we try to find other avenues. But again, our past is what enables us to deal with the present and prepare for our future. So avoiding remembering our past, it can be useful for for some purposes or some period of time, but eventually you have to deal with it. So again, when you are in the middle of the communication, the spirit may try to avoid certain subjects that are painful to them, and try to find different ways of dealing with it. But on our progress, on our evolutionary journey, we have to deal with especially with the mistakes that we made, right? I don't know if I answered what you wanted.
Yeah, but sometimes the interpretation is different. For example, sometimes you have two spirits that went through an experience, and you know, the victim and the person that caused that, inflict that pain, they might have a different, you know, view of, for example, the one that committed the whatever crime might think that the victim led him or forced him or her to do it, whatever it was, and the victim, of course, you know, is in a point that I didn't do nothing wrong. So what I'm saying, what I'm trying to get is, even though we remember, we might see two different pictures of what really happened. And if you are a victim or you're commit the crime, if you're not willing to overcome that, it doesn't matter if you remember or not. That's what I was trying to. That's what I my perception on some of the cases.
We were talking about it, and I was thinking about the bullies, right? One thing that we talk a lot nowadays are the bullies in school, right? So the ones that were bullied in school, they remember the ones that bully them, and they have the trauma, and they remember perfectly. The bullies themselves, sometimes they don't remember being bullies. They you know, when they revisit with the victims, they had no idea the pain they caused and the harm they have done. I've seen this, you know, I read about this in some testimonials, and so of course the experience is completely different. But when we are dealing with the spirits in a mediumship meeting, we have to deal with what the spirit gives us, right? And try to understand better and go deeper on what the spirit gives. So if we have two sides of one story in a meeting, each side has to have a different approach, because of course the experiences are different, right? Someone, again, as I said before, you ask two friends that went through experience 30 years ago, and they're going to give completely different versions of the same event, right? Because what was important for one was not important at all for the other.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Danny.
I was thinking about this when I asked my question about Emmanuel. Like, when he's retelling the story, and he's the one retelling the story of other characters. So it is his perception of the events, or the information is given to him as if the characters are giving the information, because it's he's narrating the book, he's creating, he's building the story, and he's very good at that, actually. So it's his writing strategies are amazing. So I wonder how much of his talent is in the writing, is in the retelling the story, or telling the story, including other people, and he is actually telling us things that actually happened. So because he was there as well as an incarnated person, but he's telling about him as a separated character.
You have to remember that more evolved spirits have the ability to access the memory banks of less evolved spirits, or if allowed, spirits at the same level as they are, and access. We see this in the books of André Luiz, right? That the mentors go and tell the story of the spirit they are facing. They go and see all the story that happened. So again, I haven't read this, but my understanding is that Emmanuel had access to this other people of the stories that he tells, had access to their thoughts and their behaviors. That for me it makes sense that he would have, because he's telling an important story and it's important to cover all the bases. So I would guess that he would have access to all those spirits that he's narrating the story, probably with the permission of all of them, because they are, it's also important for them. It said that Chico was there also, was a part of the story, especially 2,000 years ago. It was said that Chico was the wife, right, Livia? So I imagine that Emmanuel had access, a much broader access to each of the characters of the story.
So in this case, as we are talking, it's not like there are two versions, two experiences. So if I go back to my childhood and I experience an event and I ask my siblings, it's like completely different. So sometimes, like, were you there? Like, yes, I was there, but I didn't remember this, I remember that. So in the case of Emmanuel, which version is he recounting? Is he counting
the version of the person?
The person, how the person itself felt and reacted?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's telling about Publio Lentulus and his wife, Livia. He has access to Livia's thoughts and at that stage, and when he's describing what she thought, not what Publius saw from the outside, because that would be a completely different story. Like you said, right? You tell your story, and if your brothers or sister is going to tell your story, they're going to tell you a story completely different from what you experienced, because there are things that are important to you or not important to them, right? So no, Emmanuel would go into each character thoughts and reactions to the scenes. My understanding of how he would tell the story. I don't see any other way to do it. Okay.
So in order to just a quick one, in order to help when someone remembers, because as we are discussing, might be a distorted memory of a let's call reality, has to have someone to explain, guide through whatever to what really is the real interpretation, because just remembering is not enough. In order to
he doesn't access your interpretation of the memory, but he accesses the reality of what happened, the real, because there is your memory and there is your interpretation of your memory, and he accesses your memory, not the interpretation that you give.
Without bias.
Without bias, yes. Well, with what you were thinking, let's say, he's accessing your fight with another kid when you were 13. He's describing it how you thought, how you reacted to that fight. Not how you look today back to that fight, but what you were thinking during that fight when you were 13 years old. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Maybe how you see it now is completely different from how you experience there, and I'm sure it is, right? Because you learn and you mature. So the reactions you had when you were 13 are different from the ones that you looking back you think now, right? Because if you if you are going to narrate it now, you are going to try to let's say change a little bit, clean your image, or give a better version of yourself. Normally that's our tendency, right? So, but the reality of what you were thinking and doing there, it's probably a little bit different. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to stop here. Stop sharing here. What we have for this weekend on Saturday, the United States Spiritist Federation lecture is by José Mussi from Toronto, The Good Samaritan, a parable made for Christmas. So in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus teaches us that kindness should be extended to all our brothers and sisters. This is also the spiritual meaning of Christmas that we should never forget. So this is Saturday at 11 a.m. This Sunday, we are back to the book Liberation. We are going to study, let me get the chapter here.
You have to finish the chapter, maybe one more page.
Oh, you haven't finished the chapter?
Yeah, if you want, I can finish the chapter. You can continue if you want.
So we are going to finish chapter 6 and cover chapter 7. Okay, you remember where we stopped on 6? You
Yes.
have it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And book club we resumed yesterday. Next week we will discuss chapter 7 of the book Renunciation. Okay, and just to mark your calendars, on Sunday the 19th, we are going to have our year-end lecture by Jussara, and she's going to be talk about perseverance workers, or the works of the, I have to translate, yeah, the lecture here, the workers of Jesus, the workers of perseverance. Okay.
That's a
Zoraida,
lecture.
yeah, that's a lecture on the 19th. Okay, Jussara is going to present it.
What time?
Zoraida, can you do our final prayer?
What time is the lecture?
Of course.
11.
Yeah.